Okay, cool. Well, let's get going. I think because I'm not sure exactly how many we have, but it's great as webinar based that we get going. So I think the first thing I just love, like just to see who is online, if we could just type in the chat box where everyone's actually tuning in from, and just what you're a coach, player, parent. So for me, I'm just going to put in coach. And I'm in from Denver. So if everyone could just type in just to sort of see where people are listening in from, that'd be really awesome. And I love that everyone's muted except for me. So New Jersey, there you go, from Maryland, cool. All right, and Hanan, are you also, if you're with us, I think I can see you there. Let us know where you're tuning in from if you can, but otherwise, depending obviously on what sort of numbers we get, what I'll do, Teresa and Hanan, I'll start the sort of presentation, this being recorded. And then of course, if you've got any questions at all, or you want to jump in and chat, please do just type in the chat box and hopefully I'll be able to see that and or just put your hand up or stop me something and then we'll go from there. Sound good? Yeah? All right, awesome. Love the thumbs up. So let me share my screen and just so we know a little bit about where we're heading for this presentation. So I'm just going to click on screen share and I'm just going to click on my PowerPoint from the beginning. So let me stop sharing that. Let's try that again, team. So take two, it's always the way, isn't it? Love it. All right, so let me just bear with me 2 seconds while I go to directly to this PowerPoint, and that should, from beginning, and we should be clicking on any minute. All right, it's gone to the end of the PowerPoint. Don't you love that, everybody? Don't you love that? All right, let me just try that one more time. There's no point starting at the end with the end in mind. So, but I know exactly what the PowerPoint is. So I'm going to even, as I continue to sort of problem solve this, the first question, because we're going to start with a little bit of a true and false question, is I am going to ask you a question and I just want you to write true or false in the chat box while I'm working this out. So the female population makes up 49.6% of the population. So is that true or false? So just pop that in your chat box and let me know what your thoughts are there, everybody. All right. Okay. All right, here we go. Winning. All right, so that was the first question. So, of course, the answer was, and don't worry, remember, it doesn't matter if you get them wrong, it's just about having a go. So the answer there is true. So, you know, we're thinking about the population, that's where we're starting, and we make up at least half the population. So I just wanted to, you know, an area of passion of mine is definitely in that teenage space. So the next question that I have for everybody, true or false, just pop it in the chat box, is 7 out of 10 girls, so we're talking about teenage girls here, believe that they are not good enough or they do not measure up in some way. So that is the next question. Just type in true or false. Totally up to you. Is it true? Is it false? And as you can imagine, unfortunately, that's true. And that's measure up in some way, including their looks, their performance in school, and their relationships with family and friends. So quite an alarming statistic there from Real Girls, Real Pressure on the National Report on the State of Self-Esteem. All right, we've got 4 more to go. So the next one is true or false. 92% of teen girls would like to change something about the way they look. 92%. What do you think? True or false? Once again, unfortunately, the answer there is true. And with that being said, would you believe body weight ranking the highest of all the categories they're wanting to change that about themselves, which really goes into a huge part of my philosophy with regards to athletic development and using the word health instead of diet as an example, and how the language that we use, which we'll speak about later, so I know that you're all on here and no doubt passionate about this topic as well, and how we empower, especially teen girls, because of that dropout rate on the cusp of adolescence. So three more true or false questions. So these are pretty easy ones. Of course, the first one is, are girls less competitive than boys? And especially these stats were just before that onset of puberty. And true or false on that one? And the answer, of course, is false. So it's not as though that they are less competitive at all. It's the way that we design competition. And certainly with regards to, 62% of girls play sport to make friends and create new friendships, and 55% for that sense of belonging. So if we can do team aspects and competitive aspects within a team, within a safe space, I think that, that's absolutely critical. So I'm sure you'll all agree with me there. Girls do love to compete and they love to play the game. The next one, pretty obvious again, but I love this. Girls are more fragile than boys. True or false? Absolutely 100%. Of course, the answer is false. Girls are just as brave and just as tough. And, the way that we give them opportunities and the way that we obviously empower them is so critical, especially on that time frame just before adolescence. And finally, the last one, and then I'll hit the chat box and see how you all did. And this one I think is really interesting as well, especially from any parents that are on board listening. And that is with regards to boys. True or false? Boys get $1.13 million more invested in them and in their sport. True or false? So the answer, of course, is true. So that really taps into, again, just an awareness, our own subconscious bias that half the time we don't even know that's there. And then all of a sudden you've got a situation where this is happening without us even realizing it. So giving those opportunities, both financially and from a scheduling perspective, I think is absolutely critical. So let me just see if I can pull up the chat at the same time as my PowerPoint and see if I can get, looks like we've got some answers in there. And I'm not sure if I can do that and do my PowerPoint at the same time. So I'll stop after this next section, and then we'll come back and I'll see if there's any questions. So this really sets the scene for today's presentation. I said we're going to unlock what makes a great coach and what makes a champion player, and then talk about 3 strategies that anyone can implement, whether you're a coach, whether you're a parent, whether you're a player. And so moving along to the next slide. Right, technology is having a wonderful day with me today. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my PowerPoint for the moment, and hopefully, I love, got some answers in there. True, false, excellent. So what I want everyone to do now in the chat box, because I know obviously my PowerPoint presentation off the back of my hand. So the next question is, and I'd love everyone to have a go at just answering one quality, but in 1 to a maximum of 3 words, what makes a great coach? So go ahead and type in, it could be 1 word, 2 words. It doesn't have to be a statement. It could be 3 qualities. But I had the opportunity to ask one of the best players in the world, Roger Federer, this question. And I'll tell you his answer in a minute. That then, and his answer actually ended up being in the top 3 responses I've surveyed around close to 500 coaches now, both equal male and female. I'm going to type my answers, what I believe makes a great coach, in the chat box, as everyone else wants to. Yeah, caring, professional, ethical, love it. Thank you, Christina. Excellent. Rob, planning, understanding, caring, fantastic. Mine are, I've got energy, empathy, and enjoyment. So they're my 3 E's that I sort of live by: leadership, supportive, fantastic. Some really great answers there. So as I go back and have another wonderful go at sharing this PowerPoint presentation. All right, so we'll give it one more go, and then we'll hopefully be able, no, it seems to be frozen. But as I'm continuing to solve that problem and multitask, I'm going to share the answers with you. So the top answer is, of all these coaches that I've surveyed so far, number 1 is passion. So obviously goes without saying. Number 2 is knowledge, and number 3 is the answer that Roger Federer said. It's also the answer that Judy Murray, who's an incredible coach, the mother of Andy Murray and Jamie Murray, and then I asked Serena Williams' coach, Patrick Mouratoglou. And then even Billie Jean King got back to me as well. And they all said someone who listens. And so when we come from that perspective of listening, I think when you're coaching girls, that really sets the scene for the rest of this presentation. And, I think that the next slide was just going to say that, Patrick Mouratoglou took the concept of listening and then just broke it down a little bit further. And he said, you have to be able to hear what the player is thinking. And I just, obviously mind reading, etc. as a coach, but quite often I'm sure if anyone coaches girls, or you have girls, or you are a female player listening in here today, you'll often probably be able to relate to when, sometimes when someone says, how are you? You'll just straight away say, fine. When actually maybe sometimes you're not fine. So it's that being able to really listen, truly actively listen, to be able to really get a sense of what's going on for the player, which I think is absolutely critical as a coach, and also as a parent as well, absolutely critical. So sets the scene for the rest of this webinar as I give my screen sharing one more go. Let's give it a last try. See if we can't get this happening. You are screen sharing. I know. Thank you. Yeah, looks like my screen is frozen. So I'm going to continue on. So the next part of this presentation was actually unpacking what all champions have in common. So I love so far that everyone's sort of pitching in with qualities. So let's go now to the next a bit of research around. This was looking at what players who excelled in their sport, what 5 qualities did they have in common, and I'm going to share two with you now, and then I'll reveal the last 3 at the very end of the presentation. So that way you're with me for the hour, hopefully. So let's go ahead now again. Type in the chat box. What do you think? Great players, and I know the Michael Jordan documentary is The Last Dance has been one that I've really enjoyed. Some great messages in there. So when we're really thinking about high performance players, what do you think some of the things that they have in common? I'll type in the first one just to get us started in the chat box there. So the first one, number 1, is actually work ethic. So that ability to, hard work. Thanks, Teresa. Yeah, adaptable, totally. especially in the moment. It's almost like they have an abundance of time, isn't it? You know, when you watch those champion players in all sports, it looks like they're in the moment. The second quality I'll type in the chat box is that no matter what they do, dedication, love it, drive, beautiful, passion. So the second quality that they all have in common is purpose. So it's almost like this ability to do things and at the exact moment with 100% purpose. It's the whole quality practice concept versus quantity. It's not just get a 2-hour training session in. It's what's the point? You're better off doing even Matt Swalander, quite a famous tennis player many years ago. He only could have an indoor court for 45 minutes. So how he maximized that 45 minutes was all down to purpose and the purpose of the practice. And I really love that. So so you have to stay on the line with me and for the last three and get to the end of the webinar. So so there's the first two that I'm going to share. All right, so working with female players and some of the principles that we can do to empower them, because this is the whole purpose of this one is about empowerment. And so the first concept that I wanted to share was what I call the concept of superpowers. Now, if you read a great book by an Australian author, Stephen Biddulph, it's called Raising Girls, great book. And he really, again, talks about, especially on that cusp of adolescence, like 11 to 14 years, that this is the time where she's finding her sense of soul and really trying to find out, like, what am I good at? Like, what are my strengths? And so the story that that I would love to share is, and it always amazes me. I work with a lot of elite teams, and this was an elite netball team, Scottish netball team that I was working with. And so they're elite athletes. They walked in the room, very confidently. And then we just had an exercise where they had to stand up and say, "My superpowers are." And I was absolutely amazed how much they struggled with that activity, because we were looking for a minimum of three superpowers. And so they were struggling, maybe they'd get one out and then they would say things like, "I think my superpower is maybe I'm good at passing." And they'd sometimes default straight to their sport. And then when we really peeled it back, as we do, like the layers on the onion, and we really interacted, these players were interacting with their teammates. It was amazing how easily the teammate was able to say, "Oh, you're absolutely resilient, you're brave, or you're the biggest team player, you make sure you keep our energy up, you're like the glue, you hold us together." And it was a really cool flow of superpowers really invited by their teammates. So, and I think that's something that that is like finding those superpowers and peeling back the layers to be able to do that, and asking, 5 of your closest friends what they think your superpowers are is a fantastic way to help to really help build this the strengths within themselves. And so where I'm going to ask everyone to do now, of course, especially with my PowerPoint not working, is I would love people to share what they think their superpower is. So in the chat box, I just want you to reflect, and if you go, like this Scottish sort of elite netball team did, then you could quickly ask someone, if anyone's close by, "Hey, what do you think my superpower is?" And then just type in the chat box, so one of my superpowers, so my superpower is, and then just pop in what that is for you. Often people, tell me that I have a really great vibe and a positive energy and a really abundance of that. And I think it is something that I bring. Right, Christina, my superpower is empathy. Love that. Being able to walk in someone else's shoes, or even somebody described empathy to me the other day as being able to walk alongside somebody, which I really love that. So, I think it's something just a really great question to, especially to ask our female athletes. And it's not something that they, necessarily they're going to come out and just say what it is. But the more we can encourage that, and the more that that's okay, I think it's a brilliant skill. My superpower is listening, and I would say empathy too. Fantastic. Love that, everybody. Thank you. My superpower is perspective. Nice. Rob, my superpower is paying attention to detail. Fantastic. Excellent, everybody. Thanks for sharing. And I think it's such a great quality to be able to have sort of 3 core inner superpowers, and being able to help our players on how we unpack that, I think is really really cool thing to be able to do. So the next section of, so that was sort of the first core component, if you will. The second one is this concept, what I like to call stretch, and being able to stretch yourself. So again, if you can imagine, we had this picture of like the onion, and within that, the onion, you've got your 3 core superpowers, and then just looking at each of the extra layers around the onion, and to be able to, before we even talk about how we encourage our female players and athletes to stretch themselves, because that certainly works way better than throwing them out of their comfort zone, in my experience. I would love you to share the confidence formula. Because we've got a couple of great listeners on here, I'd love everyone to just type it, retype it. So I'll type it first. So confidence equals time plus experience. Let's see how many people we've got on board and who could type the confidence formula back in. Look at that. Attention to detail, Rob's straight on it. Confidence equals time plus experience. Fantastic. Love it. Let's see. Yeah, thank you. Excellent. Confidence equals time plus experience. Love it. Now, as they're coming in, let me just take a little bit of a deeper dive on what I mean by that. A lot of parents say, I just wish my child was more confident. I wish my daughter was more confident. And so, confidence is one of those things that it's like a ball of energy, really, and it can leave you, but the more you build your self-esteem layer by layer, again coming back to this onion principle, then it doesn't leave you as quickly. It doesn't just fly away. It's like a build up over, of course, time. Now, time's not something we can necessarily short circuit. Monday can't go any quicker than Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, etc. But the actual, if we think about time, and we think about, again, like I said, quality practice, we can definitely short circuit time. But the coolest thing about the stretch cycle, or stretching yourself one layer at a time, is, of course, the experience. So confidence equals time plus experience. You can short circuit experience. So just by being on this webinar, and again, adding one thing into your coaching toolkit, your parenting toolkit, or your playing toolkit, will then help short circuit time to be able to help build your self-esteem, which equals confidence. So that's sort of how the confidence formula is applied and how it works. And so being able to have our female players take a player that they want to be like, obviously female role models are absolutely critical for empowering girls, and just taking that one thing that those people are good at. So the empowerment piece is like looking at, okay, so here's my inner superpowers. Now this is the layer just outside of that, and who's where I want to be, or who does something slightly better than me that I could add. Maybe it's being able to take more risks on big points, or in huge pressure moments in all sports, not just tennis. And who does that well, and what, why do they do it well, or how do they do it well, or what are their thoughts and philosophies around that, and being able to short circuit their experience and maybe give one of those strategies a go is how we talk about stretching layer by layer. So that's sort of concept and principle number 2. I'll just stop there, maybe just see if there's any questions, see if anyone wants to jump in and or ask anything relating to the first two sort of principles around empowerment in this space. Just see if anyone's got anything or just want to share anything. Feel free, even today, I think if you wanted to unmute yourself, take and open up your video, feel free if you wanted to share or you want to ask anything, or give you just a little minute, just as you take a moment to reflect on, you know, who maybe is a mentor in your life, or someone you really respect, someone you look up to, that you think if you could ask to buy a coffee at their convenience, how could you, especially at the moment, I shouldn't say it, not in person, you could potentially okay, here we go. So Teresa's saying, what did you do to help the girls discover their superpowers? Fantastic. So on that slide, the key points on that slide, the first one was the one around asking 5 people closest to you what your superpowers are. You know, as a lot of people know too, the 5 people most close to you, you know, does actually say a lot about who you are as well. So we also get our athletes to reflect on who those 5 people are, and then reaching out to those 5 people and asking them about their superpowers. On this particular day, we split the team up into groups based on different positions on the court. So we had, you know, the one person from the attacking team with someone from defence, with some from the centre field in small groups, and then they had to go beyond just 3 superpowers. So it was five superpowers about each person within the group. We also then had them report back to the group and talk about each other. So by the time we finished that entire process, it was much easier for them to go, hey, my superpowers are. And there was a minimum of 3, because obviously we went to 5, and then, you know, they were able to settle on those 3 that really work for them. Hopefully that sort of gave you some ideas around unpacking the superpowers. Christina, you mentioned the importance of female role models for girls. What about male role models? Yeah, absolutely. You know, interestingly, when you look at the statistics, I think that it's out of the UK. If we go back to boys for a minute, and we look at, you know, if you ask a 5-year-old boy to name, you know, 3 people who they think are role models, they can easily list 3 people. Usually in the UK, I think it's mainly soccer players, but interestingly, they'll easily be able to do that. So male role models and female role models, I think it's as important that we have both. So I don't think females necessarily need only female role models, but I think it's also important that we don't just say, hey, who's your favourite player? You know, who's your favourite male player and female player? So we're always, you know, we can ask that of boys as well. So again, we're not pigeonholing anyone or putting them in boxes to say this, you know, this can only work a certain way. So then the follow-up question there, Teresa, did they feel more confidence afterwards? It took a while, because they'll still almost put in language words around, you know, my superpowers are, or my teammate said my superpower is this, but I'm not really sure. And so it actually took just that inner safety, that circle, to really create that sense of being able to say, hey, my superpowers are, and having them say it and really believe it and have their neurology believe it, took practice, took time, and it got better and better throughout the session. This was sort of a 2-day workshop. So then when we did it at the end of the second day, you could see a lot more alignment, which was pretty cool. And you're welcome. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Teresa. You're welcome. And the one other concept that you may really love on point number 2, talking about the stretch goal or the stretch cycle or whatever you want to call it, stretch your comfort zone, just clarifying that, or especially around language. One of the things that really helped even these elite teams as well, when they set themselves that stretch, that, you know, what's that area that they need to improve, not what their weakness is, but an area for development. The way that we say that, and I'm going to type it in the chat box here, because I want everyone, I'd love, again, everyone to share. But the way we get them to say it is, who I am is the possibility of ... So, so when we're getting them to, again, stretch, so if you think about a player who's just above where you want to be, and you think about what it is about their game that you could add to your game. Perhaps, again, tennis is obviously my sport, so giving a tennis example, let's say I want to make more first serve percentages and I want to get an extra, 10 kilometres on my serve. So maybe I'm looking at, somebody who does that well, in, female role model is Samantha Stosur, and maybe it's the fact that she gets up higher than what I do. So who I am, is the possibility of leg drive, lift and push. Just a couple of keywords to add to me. I love that one. Who I am is the possibility of success. I know that I did this activity really, really in my early 20s. I've been doing sort of personal development stuff for many, many years. And I remember one of the big ones that I had in my early 20s, and this is very common in some of the athletes that I work with, is who I am is the possibility of self-acceptance. So just accepting myself and where I was and my circumstances, and stop playing victim and just accept where I was from that moment was a really cool one. Feel free, if anyone else wants to type in, again, thinking back to the confidence formula equals time plus experience. Whose experience can we short circuit? What could we add to inviting yourself to stretch in that area? And then, of course, it's breaking it down further. So if who you are is the possibility of success, then it's like, okay, well, now what does success mean to me? And how do I actually then help my players, find the definition of that, so they can actually set a stretch goal that has action steps and so forth. So that's how we increase the size of the onion within the core of who the girls are, so that they feel empowered, and so that they can continue to build and work towards their sporting and academic goals. So that's point 2. And then finally, the third point of today's webinar is the actual wording of using empowering language. So the final piece in the story that I wanted to share was actually I ran a girl power camp out of New Jersey. This was about 2 years ago, and then so we did that on the Friday night, and then we had a follow-up session on Saturday afternoon. And she chose an affirmation just to help her keep in the present, which was, I believe in me. Now, that affirmation alone, she used that morning before she ran a 100-meter sprint. She's in her athletics competition, and she ran a PB, which she hadn't done in 2 years, just from having a strategy, like something simple. We had an anchor as well, an anchor and an affirmation. And, I think just her firing off that morning before she ran the race, which was one of the coolest things that I've ever sort of experienced with regards to the Girl Power Camp, just how one small strategy, one piece of empowering language really impacted that statement. So, all right, I love the self-acceptance. It's relevant in different areas of my life and isn't restricted by age and phase. Could not agree more. Self-acceptance, it's that whole concept of being enough and feeling that you're enough, so that we can reverse that statistic we started with at the start. Thank you, Han, for sharing. I really appreciate that. So that was the third really key component to this webinar, is having that ability through affirmations to help stay in the present. So some of my favorites, I had a list there that I wanted to share, which was, we've said the one that she used, I believe in me, I am ready, I love, I am enough, I'm capable, I'm strong, I'm powerful, I'm here and now is one that a player that I was working with last year on the WTA tour, she uses that one all the time. And just those short, sharp statements and firing those off to help be in the moment and stay in the moment. It's like, yeah, accept all, things come and go, negative thoughts, okay, in, out, okay, let them go. Now, boom, I can do it. And just firing off those affirmations, is the third core component to this webinar in terms of just walking away feeling empowered with those three strategies. So I'd love, so the one that I use, and maybe if we could all type in the chat box now, one of those that resonated with you, or is there one that you already say that you really like and you really use? The one I use all the time is just pretty simple. That's my one there. So, just that nice, simple, I can do it, just that empowerment piece. Has anyone else got one that they already use or they use with their players or helps them get in state before a meeting? It can be anything you like. Or any of those ones that I just mentioned, did any of those resonate with anyone? Obviously, there's lots of different ones. The important thing with it as well is that with your female players, that you're not saying you can do it. So it's okay to say yeah, let's go. But if you've got I, me, my in those short, sharp statements, that's I find a really critical piece of the puzzle within those three core components. So. All right, moving on. One of the things that I really wanted to share today is now what's ahead of us and what's next. And one of the things that's next, especially, oh, thank you, beautiful. We've got some coming through now. I am strong. I give my all. Love those two. Fantastic. Thank you, ladies. Excellent. One of the things that I'd love to share about what's coming up next is the actual empowerment project. So for the next three webinars, I'm really excited to be running for Centercourt. The next one is going to be around self-awareness. So as we know, creating self-awareness and just being self-aware is so important. The next 3 weeks is part of a module called the Empowerment Project, and it's all based on confidence, relationships, and purpose. So they're the 3 core components, and of course, self-awareness sits under the purpose module. So that will be the next webinar that I'll be giving it my all as well on that topic. And what we'll be doing is there'll be 4 key components. It'll be the why, so looking at the motivation, the what, the important strategies of self-awareness. For example, one of the certainties in life that we can control is, of course, change. And it's inevitable. Change is inevitable. So how do we just embrace that? And especially right now, it's even more critical than ever. And then when we look at the how, so what are the actual practical strategies? So for example, today, I shared 3 practical strategies that I use a lot with athletes. So the Superpowers, the stretch goal, and the empowering language through the affirmation piece. So that's an example of the how you implement the strategy. And then I'll be asking you to take action and inviting players to take action on which we call the now. So, like for example, with today's webinar, again, to win the game, I do use tennis scoring, 15, 30, 40. So if you have an athlete and you'd love to work with them, so to get 15 points, you'd be unpacking three superpowers. You'd be setting yourself one stretch goal to stretch that, increase the layers on the onion. And the third one would be to pick an affirmation. That's how you win the goal, using those 3 core those 3 core steps. So that will be the next phase of the webinar. So self-awareness. Then the one after that is around patterns. So patterns of being. So what are our morning and our evening routines, and how can we do a better job around that? And then the week, that final week is around empowering language. So that's what's coming up. I'm really excited to be bringing that sort of series, empowerment series, to the Centercourt 360. So would open it up back up to questions, and please feel free. I know we've got a pretty much a bit of a smaller group here on today. So let's see if anyone can remember. I did ask you something earlier in the webinar. If you did stay the whole time, I wonder if anyone remembers what that was about. If anyone's curious to ask me a question on what those other, what that other part was. Let's see, we've got some great, I know we have some great listeners, Superpower listeners on board on this call today, but also just opening it up for Q&A now as well. So if you wanted to unhook your microphone again, unhook your camera, please feel free, or just pop it in the chat box if you're comfortable, just sending it in the chat box if anyone's got any questions on anything to do with what's coming up, what's next, again, around any of those topics. And if not, that's okay as well. So I'll give anyone a couple of minutes if there's any questions on those 3 steps. All right, thank you, Rob. Okay, is the additional key quality enjoying the sport? I love that. I love that question. So looking for the last 3 qualities. I'm sure it's in there somewhere. But yeah, I'm glad that you've asked the question. Great attention to detail. Now I'll share the last 3. So number 3. So let's just recap actually. So because I'm getting my head around. Okay, so work ethic, purpose. So number 3 is belief. We spoke a lot about that, a little, well, not a lot, sorry, but we touched on it a little bit within this webinar. Belief to me is a build-up of self-esteem, and which obviously then leads to that confidence. So building that up and having belief in yourself, of course, happens over time, layer by layer, and having a real great sense of those 3 core inner superpowers. Question. What the high-performing athletes have in common? Yes, thank you so much. So that's number 3. Love it. So now I'll share number 4. I think number 4 is a really interesting one. I think it's definitely critical if in high-performance sport. Determination is certainly a very critical factor as well. In this particular bit of research, number 4 was resilience. And I know especially, in tennis, it's like these micro moments of resilience. It's, the quicker you can get over it, the better. I certainly read once that even, Tiger Woods allows himself those 3 steps to be, and all great athletes, like when they hit a shot that's not where they wanted it to go or whatever it might be, that there's that moment of like, oh, and frustration and like, oh, I can't believe that was a little bit off. And then from 3 seconds or 3 steps, they're resetting, and all that energy is that future-based thinking, and all about how, what it is that they need to do to either get themselves out of trouble and get back into the game. So micro moments of resilience in sport is absolutely critical. That was number 4. And then interestingly, number 5, the 5th quality that all champions have in common was team. So, and especially I was obviously reflecting on my experience in tennis, and there's no doubt, absolutely, the higher up the tree you go, or the more you excel in your sport, there are more voices, there are more opinions, there are so many people that are involved in an athlete's development. And it's being able to, know which voices we need to listen to, and what is actually going on, around us, that is really, really critical. And so that we know what each of the team members' superpowers are, because, you know, when we put the player at the center of the learning, which is definitely what every modern coach should do, that's critical to know what the team can bring to that player, and having that in place makes all the difference. And especially going back to working with female players, you know, remember, they don't really care what you know until they know that you care. So having a collaborative relationship and caring about them as both a performer and a person, and every team member knowing that, appreciating that, respecting that, showing great empathy in that space is absolutely critical. So so that rounds out the top 5 responses, and which, you know, which helps me, I guess, sort of wrap things up here, just to say thank you to everybody who stayed with us from start to finish. I'll pop my email just in the chat box as well, and please feel free to follow up if anyone does have any questions. Perfect. Thank you, Christina. We were thinking alike there. Obviously, just want to apologise. I was on 15 minutes earlier, and the PowerPoint worked perfectly. So today was about being adaptable. I think somebody said that makes a great coach. So hopefully, even without the images and the pictures, the good news is I live and breathe the content, and so so that came to me very easily and effortlessly, because I love what I do, and I think, you know, when we coach female players, you know, that's really critical as well. When we be hosting the other webinars. So I'm pretty sure, so that next block that I just explained around self-awareness, patterns and language, those next 3 will be, so that self-awareness will be next week. I'm just going to double check with Tara whether that'll be the Tuesday or the Wednesday. Tuesday or Wednesday, and then that'll be again, then we'll have patterns the week after, and then empowering language the week after that. So we got to see the last slide early on. That is very true. It's frozen on the last slide, and then it was frozen in the middle slide. I always finish, thank you. The ball is in your court. Normally I do hit it into my screen there. There we go. And if, you know, obviously for this session to be worth it, please take action, whether it just be in the next 24 hours for yourself, next 7 days for one of your teammates, and in the next 30 days for someone in your community. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for hosting. I really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone got something out of that. And yeah, definitely the ball is in your court to take action. And yeah, I just appreciate everyone's time. And yeah, again, I'm happy to stay on the line a couple of minutes longer if anyone wants to have a chat further. So, but if you want to jump off the call, I really appreciate, and I'm really grateful. I know time's a very huge commodity that we all value. So, so thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, Teresa. I appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Love your backdrop.
Yeah, it's one of those, I was eating, so I didn't want to eat while you were.
No, all good, all good. I just still can't believe that PowerPoint didn't work.
It always seems to happen. I know I had to share my screen and do other things, so don't worry.
Yeah,
you were,
yeah.
as you said, you know your screens by heart, and so
yeah.
Definitely still, we learned a lot, so thank you.
All right, no, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
I'll see you on the next one.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Emma, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much for listening in. I really appreciate it. Daughter of Luna. Fantastic. Excellent. I hope Luna was listening in too.
Yes,
All
Emma. My daughter, she's a teenager, Luna.
Yeah.
And although here in Portugal, we are currently in Portugal and it's late, she started hearing your webinar and she asked, Mama, can I sit with you? This seems interesting. So she wanted to let you know that she's 12 years old. She also plays tennis and she enjoys. So congratulations, Emma.
Thank you. Thank you. Please feel free to, to jump on the next couple. They're definitely all about empowering, and especially, you know, teenage girls. I have a TEDx talk. It's called Unleashing Female Potential. So if she just types in YouTube, type in my name and Unleashing Female Potential, it's only 13 and a half minutes, and hopefully she might get a lot out of that as well. So
I will see it as soon as possible. It sounds really interesting.
thank you so much, Luna. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the webinar.
You're the best. You're the best. Bring out those superpowers.
And you have a really nice smile.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you very much. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Comments? All right. So if not, then yeah, signing off, and thanks again, Rob, for hosting, and thank you to Centercourt for all your support, and can't wait to run the next 3 lots of webinars. Will do. Keep up the great work, everybody. Same with you. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.